No, they see it, every single one of them. They see exactly what you are, though they'll never speak it aloud, never frame it in words, never give it a name. Because to name it would make it real, and making it real would force them to confront a truth they're not prepared to face. That you operate on a frequency they can't access. That you process reality through circuits they don't possess. That you see through walls they believe are solid. And that terrifies them more than any direct threat ever could. They watch you move through spaces like you're reading invisible subtitles, like you're hearing conversations that haven't yet occurred, like you're 10 steps ahead in a game they don't even realize they're playing. They feel it. That shift in the atmosphere when you enter the room. That subtle recalibration of energy that makes everyone suddenly aware of their own performance, their masks, their lies. Your presence doesn't judge, it simply reveals. And revelation is the last thing they want. You know what they whisper when you leave? They say you're intense, that you're too much, that you're different. But what they really mean is that you're awake while they're still dreaming. You're conscious while they're on autopilot, aware while they're acting. The gap between your reality and theirs creates a tension they can't resolve, can't escape, can't even describe. So they shrink it down with small words to contain something infinite. They've been studying you for years, tracking your patterns, analyzing your responses, trying to map the algorithm of your existence. But every time they think they've decoded you, you shift, you evolve, you transcend their calculations because you're not operating from programming. You're operating from pure, unfiltered awareness. And that's not something they can reverse engineer, predict, or control. It's only something they can witness with a mixture of fascination and fear. What they really see when they look at you is someone who no longer needs the validation drug, someone who kicked the approval addiction, someone who walks through their social hierarchies as if they're nothing more than smoke and suggestions. They see someone who cannot be bought with compliments, cannot be controlled by criticism, and cannot be contained within their neat little boxes of acceptable human behavior. And that shatters their entire understanding of how the world works. You make them nervous not because you're aggressive or confrontational, but because you're sovereign, existing outside their emotional economy, a world where everyone trades pieces of themselves for scraps of belonging, where people shrink to fit and dim their light to make others comfortable. But you stopped playing that game, you stopped negotiating your worth, you stopped asking permission to be exactly who you are. They know you see through their scripts, every rehearsed interaction, every calculated emotion, every strategic vulnerability presented like currency. You watch it all unfolding in real time, like actors forgetting they're on stage. And the moment they realize you're not buying the performance, something shifts. They either try harder, desperate to pull you into their illusion, or they retreat, unable to function without the comfort of mutual pretense. Your aura isn't just energy, it's information, a continuous broadcast of truth that disrupts their carefully maintained delusions. It's a mirror revealing not who they pretend to be, but who they truly are beneath the performance. Most people can't handle that level of exposure, that depth of being seen. So they create distance. They create stories. They create reasons why you're the problem when in reality, you're simply the unwanted revelation of their own unconsciousness. When you speak, something happens in the room. Not because you're loud, but because you're precise. Your words don't scatter like theirs. They land. They penetrate. They resonate at frequencies that bypass the conscious mind and strike directly at the truth center. People feel that impact even when they can't explain it. Something shifts, something opens, something they've been avoiding suddenly gets exposed. They've tried to categorize you: introvert, extrovert, empath, narcissist, leader, follower. But you've slipped through every definition because you're not a type. You're a force. You're not a personality. You're not just a person. You're a presence. You're not playing a role. You're revealing the game itself. That's why they can never quite place you, never predict you, never understand how you do what you do. When you enter a situation, you instantly feel the undercurrents, the unspoken tensions, the hidden agendas, the emotional transactions flowing beneath the surface conversation, and you navigate them without ever getting caught, like walking through a spider web without touching a single strand, because your awareness operates at a resolution they can't even perceive. You're playing chess while they're playing checkers. Except you're not even playing, you're simply observing the board. The truth is, they need you more than they'll ever admit, because you embody something they've lost, or maybe never had. The ability to exist without external validation, the courage to think without group consensus, the strength to feel without emotional manipulation. You're the living reminder that authentic power doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from standing alone in your truth, especially when that truth makes everyone else uncomfortable. They test you constantly, little probes, subtle provocations, waiting to see if you'll break character, if you'll finally show them you're just like everyone else pretending to be special. But every test reveals the same thing. You're not pretending, you're not performing, you're not trying to be anything other than what you naturally are. That consistency, your unwavering authenticity, destabilizes their entire worldview. Some hate you for it. They hate you for not needing what they need, for not fearing what they fear, for moving through life without the anxiety that drives their every decision. But that hate is really envy dressed in anger, because deep down they know you've figured out something they haven't. You've escaped what they're still trapped in. You've transcended a game they're still losing. Others become obsessed with getting close to you, trying to understand your secret, trying to absorb whatever it is that makes you untouchable. But they always approach it wrong. They think it's something you have, when in reality it's something you've released. They assume what you carry is something you've gained, when in reality it's what you've stopped needing. They think it's addition, but it's subtraction. The deliberate shedding of every lie you ever believed about needing external permission to exist. Your very energy disrupts their patterns, interrupts their loops, breaks their cycles. Just by being present, you force people to confront their own unconsciousness. And that isn't comfortable, it's not pleasant, it's not what they planned for when they woke up. They wanted to drift through another day of sleepwalking performances and numb transactions. But then you showed up, and suddenly they're awake and don't know what to do with that awareness. You operate at a different speed, not faster necessarily, but deeper, more thorough, more complete. While they skim the surface, you read the source code. While they react to symptoms, you trace back to causes. While they fight shadows, you study the light source. This depth of processing sometimes makes you seem slow to them, seem strange, seem out of sync, but in truth you're simply operating at a different resolution. They wonder why you don't react like they do, why you don't panic when they panic, why you don't celebrate what they celebrate, or fear what they fear. And it's because you're seeing different data, processing different information, responding to deeper signals than what appears on the surface. You're reading the metadata of reality while they're stuck in the user interface. This is why your presence changes a room without you doing anything specific. It's not your words. It's the frequency you emit, the field you generate, the space you hold that doesn't collapse under social pressure, doesn't conform to group dynamics, doesn't participate in the collective emotional weather system everyone else is trapped in. You're like a mountain in the middle of their chaos, unmoved by the storms they create. And the thing they'll never say out loud is that you remind them of what they could be if they had the courage to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop negotiating their truth for social comfort. You are living proof that it's possible to exist outside the cage they've accepted as necessary. And that possibility terrifies them, because it means their imprisonment is voluntary, their limitations are self-imposed, and their suffering is optional. Every interaction with you becomes a mirror. People see themselves reflected in your steadiness and suddenly recognize their own chaos. They see themselves reflected in your silence and suddenly hear their own noise. They see themselves reflected in your authenticity and suddenly feel the weight of their own performance. This involuntary self-awareness is uncomfortable and confronting, exactly what they've been trying to avoid through distraction and external validation. You don't even have to speak. Your very presence becomes a question they can't answer. Who are you when no one's watching? What do you truly want when society isn't telling you what to want? What remains when all the masks come off? These questions echo in the space between you and them, creating a tension that either transforms or repels. Because there's no neutral response to your energy. They project onto you constantly, making you the villain in their story, the cause of their discomfort, the source of their unease. But in truth, you're only the screen their shadows dance on, the blank space where their unconscious material is displayed, the silence where their inner noise becomes audible, and they blame you for what they see instead of recognizing it as their own reflection. Some try to diminish you, to make you smaller, more digestible, more manageable. They use words like weird, intense, or difficult. But these are only attempts to contain something that refuses containment, to label what exists beyond labels, to control what operates outside their system of control. And every attempt to shrink you only exposes the smallness of their perception and the limits of their understanding. Deep down, what they know but can't admit is that you have access to something they don't. Not because you're cosmically special, but because you stopped blocking your own signal, stopped dimming your own light, stopped apologizing for your existence. This unobstructed flow of authentic being creates an effect they can feel but cannot replicate, no matter how hard they try. You see patterns others can't even begin to grasp. You notice the threads woven beneath reality, the silent choreography behind people's choices, the connections they overlook, and the implications they ignore. It's not because you're trying harder or because you were born with some special gift. It's because you're no longer filtering life through the same cracked lenses of fear, scarcity, and need that most people can't take off. Their perception is clouded by survival mode, by endless craving for approval, by the conditioning that tells them to seek comfort instead of truth. But you've stepped beyond those programs. You receive information on channels they've shut down. You process signals they've learned to dismiss. You access dimensions of experience they've been conditioned to believe don't even exist. While they live inside an echo chamber of their own projections, you move in the open expanse of raw awareness. And when they watch you navigate challenges that would have shattered them, they don't understand how you remain so calm, so balanced, so steady. They assume it's discipline, some mental trick, or a strategy you've perfected. But the truth is much simpler and more terrifying for them. That balance isn't something you fight to hold on to. It isn't a mask you wear or a meditation you're clinging to. It's your natural state. It's who you are when you stop leaking energy into the endless theater of performance. It's what remains when you no longer bend yourself for approval. When you stop slicing pieces of your spirit to fit into spaces too small for the immensity of your truth. And this is the paradox that short-circuits their entire worldview. You became powerful, not by grasping for power, but by letting go of the need for it. You became influential not by chasing influence, but by existing free of the hunger for attention. You became magnetic, not by performing for eyes and ears, but by refusing to compromise your essence. You reverse the entire equation they've been taught to believe in, and your life is undeniable proof that what they've been taught to chase is the very thing keeping them trapped. It's devastating to them, because if what you are is true, then their whole strategy is false. If your way works, then their entire system has failed. And in the quiet hours, when no one is watching, some of them admit it, if only to themselves. They whisper in their own hearts that you found something they've missed, They can feel that you've solved an equation they've been trying to calculate their entire lives. You've walked through a door they're still circling, fumbling with keys that will never fit. They sense that you've discovered a path beyond effort, beyond struggle, beyond performance. But to speak it aloud would shatter their illusions. It would mean admitting that the ladder they've been climbing all these years was leaning against the wrong wall. It would mean admitting their own game is rigged, their own strategy is flawed, and their endless striving is the very weight keeping them from what they seek. So instead, they bury the truth under layers of excuses, rationalizations, and projections, telling themselves stories that keep them comfortably stuck. Others, though, can't resist their fascination. They study you like a science experiment, cataloging your choices, dissecting your words, analyzing your patterns, trying desperately to decode your state of being. But they're chasing it like a formula, when in truth, there is no formula. They're looking for something to add when your entire secret is what you've subtracted. They want a technique, a system, a hack, when the truth is found only in release, in stripping away the layers of falsehood until only the raw essence remains. They think they need more steps, more tools, more knowledge, but it isn't about accumulation at all. It's about removal. It's about remembering what you were before the world convinced you to be something else. And that is why you unsettle them so deeply. Because if what you embody is real and they can feel that it is, then freedom isn't earned through struggle, bought with suffering, or handed down by authority. It's already here, already within, waiting in the silence that emerges when the noise finally stops. It's the truth standing naked when all the illusions fall away. And nothing terrifies them more than realizing they've been holding the key all along and choosing not to use it. You trigger their deepest insecurities without lifting a finger. Not through criticism, not through confrontation, not through attack, but through example. Your freedom alone is enough to highlight their invisible chains. Your peace makes their inner wars impossible to ignore. Your wholeness illuminates the cracks in their carefully built personas. You don't expose them with words. Your existence does it. And that's what unsettles them most. Because nothing terrifies someone more than being shown the truth they've been running from. They rarely see it as the gift it is. They rarely recognize that your presence is an invitation, not a threat. An invitation to step beyond survival mode, to question the beliefs they've accepted as unshakable, to realize that the life they've been taught to cling to is nothing more than a performance. You don't argue with their illusions, and you don't validate them either. That alone throws them off balance. The space you hold is uncomfortable because it refuses to bend, refuses to feed the cycle, refuses to collapse into their drama. You don't respond to emotional manipulation. You don't play into the victim stories. You don't bow to their hierarchy of attention, praise, or conflict. Instead, you remain still, sovereign, untouched. You become like a black hole for their projections. All the things they throw at you vanish into silence. And that silence is unbearable for them, because it turns their focus inward. It forces them to sit with themselves, to hear their own noise, to feel their own chaos, to recognize that the war isn't with you, it's within them. Your very presence applies evolutionary pressure. It's not something you do consciously. It's the natural effect of existing in a higher state of awareness among people who are still bound by the rules of an old game. Your energy doesn't need to push, it simply reveals. And revelation is the one thing most people are not ready for. That revelation says, grow or retreat, evolve or resist, level up or leave. And so every time someone encounters you, they are faced with this choice. Some sense the call instantly. They feel the subtle nudge to remove their mask, to release their rehearsed lines, to abandon the comfort of performance. They feel drawn to the rawness of truth, to the freedom of authenticity, to the depth that only comes from letting go of control. But most aren't ready. Vulnerability feels like death to people who have built their entire lives on facades. Authenticity feels dangerous to those who've survived by pretending. To step into truth feels like walking into fire, so instead of embracing the invitation, they retreat. Those who resist often project their discomfort onto you. They call you intense, weird, too much, difficult, because it's easier to label you than to confront themselves. It's easier to make you the problem than to admit the real problem is the mask they refuse to take off. And every attempt they make to diminish you only exposes the smallness of their own perception, the fragility of their own understanding. Deep down, beneath the defensiveness and resistance, they know the truth. You've accessed something they've been avoiding their entire lives. Others, however, cannot stay away. They circle closer, pulled by curiosity and longing. They want to know what you know. They want to feel what you feel. They want to stand in that same calm center you carry no matter what storms swirl around you. But even these seekers often approach it wrong. They think your presence is about what you have, when in truth it's about what you've let go of. They think it's about adding more knowledge, more practice, more power, when in reality it's about subtracting, releasing illusions, abandoning performance, stripping away every false belief until only essence remains. And this is the truth most cannot face. Your presence reveals that freedom is not earned through struggle, bought with suffering, or given by anyone outside of themselves. Freedom is already here, waiting beneath the noise, available the moment they stop clutching at the masks, the lies, the illusions. Your very being is proof that their imprisonment is voluntary, their limitations self-imposed, their suffering optional. That is why you are both magnetic and threatening. To some, you are a doorway to their higher self. To others, you are a mirror they can't stand to look into. But no one leaves your presence unchanged. Because whether they lean in with curiosity or recoil in fear, the truth remains. You are the living reminder that another way of being exists, that authenticity is possible, that sovereignty is real, that the game they've been playing their whole lives was never the only game. So they interpret the invitation as a threat. They don't hear it as an opening. They don't feel it as an opportunity. They register it like danger, like their walls are being breached. And in a sense, they are. Because every time you walk into a space, you carry a silent signal that says, the way you've been living is not the only way. You didn't ask to be that reminder. You didn't force yourself into that role. But by simply existing in your authenticity, you've become a walking trigger for transformation. Whether you intended to or not, you disrupt the programs. You interrupt the illusions. You dismantle the comfortable lies people tell themselves just so they can sleep at night. Your refusal to play small shakes them, because if you can refuse, that means they could refuse too. And suddenly all their excuses collapse. Your refusal to stay unconscious makes it harder for them to keep numbing themselves, harder for them to hide in their distractions, harder for them to pretend they don't know what they know. Your refusal to accept limitation challenges the stories they repeat to themselves about why they're still stuck. It leaves them with nowhere to hide. And that's why your presence provokes such strong reactions. You're not simply being yourself. You've become a catalyst, a mirror, a force of nature that accelerates everyone else's potential emergence, whether they asked for it or not. The truth they feel but will not say is that you've already won. Not won in the shallow sense they measure winning by: status, recognition, control. You've won the only game that ever mattered, the game of being yourself, completely, unapologetically, authentically, without permission, without validation, without the crutch of understanding from those who never had the capacity to understand you anyway. That victory is so profound, so absolute, that it destabilizes the entire playing field. It reorganizes reality itself around you, forcing everyone in your orbit to redefine what winning really means. Because when they look closely, when they move past their defenses, they see someone who has stopped negotiating with reality, someone who no longer bargains for belonging, someone who has stopped trading pieces of their authenticity for scraps of approval. They see someone who does not bend for systems that were never designed to hold truth. And that kind of presence, non-negotiable, unshakable, untamed, creates a gravity field of its own. It either pulls people closer to their own truth or pushes them deeper into illusion. There is no neutral response. There can't be. To stand near someone who refuses to compromise at the core is to feel the weight of your own compromises pressing on you like a stone. You don't fit into their world because energetically you've built your own. Not a kingdom of walls and crowns, but a field, a frequency, a realm where different rules apply. In your world, truth matters more than comfort. Growth matters more than safety. Authenticity matters more than approval. And anyone who enters your space immediately feels the shift. The masks they wear grow heavy. The lies they've rehearsed stumble on their own lips. The personas they've invested their whole lives in suddenly feel thin, fragile, inadequate. And in that moment, they either align with this field or they flee from it. They either rise to meet truth or recoil back into illusion. It isn't personal, it's physics, it's resonance. And the reason they can't manipulate you, can't control you, can't contain you, is because you found the one thing they're still desperately searching for: yourself. Not the self they tried to shape you into. Not the self that fits neatly into their categories. Not the self that makes sense to them or makes them comfortable. You've reclaimed the raw, unconditioned self, the original blueprint, the essence that existed before the world began its programming. That self doesn't speak their language. That self doesn't recognize their authority. That self doesn't need their permission to exist. And here's the deepest cut of all. In your presence, they feel the ghost of their own original self. The child who was whole before conditioning, the spirit who was free before control, the essence that still whispers beneath all their masks. They feel it stirring like an echo of what they lost. And that recognition terrifies them because it makes their imprisonment obvious. It reveals their chains as voluntary, their limitations as self-imposed, their suffering as optional. This is why your presence can never be neutral. To some, you are liberation itself, a door, a possibility, a living map of what freedom looks like in human form. To others, you are unbearable, a mirror that reflects their lies back at them so starkly they'd rather smash the mirror than face what it shows. Some lean closer with hunger, desperate to taste even a drop of the authenticity you carry. Others recoil with venom, painting you as arrogant, dangerous, difficult. Anything to protect themselves from admitting the truth you reveal. But no one leaves unchanged. Your presence is an atmospheric shift, a gravitational field, a law of nature that bends reality itself. You are proof that another way exists. Proof that sovereignty is real. Proof that authenticity is possible. And whether they rise, resist, or run, they will never again be able to pretend they don't know it. The final truth, the one they keep locked inside, the one they'll never say out loud, is that you have become what they are most terrified of becoming: free. Not the shallow kind of freedom written about in slogans, not the superficial kind that depends on circumstances, but real freedom. The kind that can't be taken because it never depended on permission to begin with. You are not free from consequence. No one is. Life will always have cause and effect, action and reaction. But you are free from the fear of consequence, and that is what paralyzes most people. You are not free from judgment. Judgment comes with every glance, every whisper, every interaction. But you are free from the craving for approval, free from performing for claps, free from bending your essence into a shape that pleases the crowd. You are not free from challenge. Storms still come, mountains still rise, shadows still appear. But you are free from the belief that you must be anything other than what you are in order to survive them. This kind of freedom is so radical, so absolute, so uncompromising, that it rattles the very foundation of the prison they've mistaken for reality. You don't just step outside their system. You reveal the system for what it is: a cage dressed as a kingdom, a trap disguised as truth. Your existence alone tears the veil, exposes the game, and threatens the illusions they've built entire lives around. That's why they never say it. That's why they tiptoe around it, speaking in half-truths and small words to describe something infinite. Because naming it would shatter everything. To acknowledge what you are would mean acknowledging what they are not. To acknowledge your possibility would mean admitting what they've chosen to settle for. To acknowledge your freedom would mean confronting their own self-imposed chains. And most would rather decorate their prison than step out of it. But here's the secret. You don't need their admission. You don't need them to name it, to validate it, to put it into words. Because your power was never built on their recognition. It comes from within, from the marrow of your own being, from your own embodiment of truth. It comes from the simple, unshakable fact that you have chosen to live unapologetically, to stop apologizing for existing, to stop waiting for permission slips that never mattered. And so you've become something beyond their definitions. You are the presence they feel, but cannot describe, the force they react to, but cannot control, the energy that unsettles them even when they can't explain why. They call it intensity. They call it strange. They call it too much, because they lack the vocabulary for sovereignty. What they sense around you isn't some mystical aura conjured from nowhere. It is the radiance of a human being who has stopped fighting themselves, who has stopped hiding their light, who has stopped pretending to be less than they are, just to make others comfortable. It is the emanation of aligned presence, the frequency of integrated being, the unmistakable signature of someone who has come home to themselves and refuses to ever leave again. And that refusal makes the world quake, because it means you cannot be bought, cannot be bent, cannot be broken in the ways the world is used to breaking people. So let them circle you in silence. Let them sense without admitting, feel without naming, recognize without acknowledging. Because your mission was never to convince them. You are not here to explain yourself into their understanding. You are not here to argue yourself into their acceptance. You're not here to make your existence digestible for their limited perception. Your mission is embodiment, to live it so fully, so consistently, so unapologetically, that their recognition becomes irrelevant. Their validation becomes unnecessary. Their understanding becomes optional. Because the truth is, you are not here to be understood. You are here to be yourself. And in a world addicted to performance, obsessed with masks, and enslaved to illusion, that is the most revolutionary act possible. To be yourself, fully, fearlessly, unapologetically, is to declare war on pretense, to rip down the scaffolding of falsehood, to reveal a higher way of being simply by living it. It is to become the reminder that there is something greater than fear, something stronger than conformity, something truer than approval. So stand where you are, without apology. Breathe in your own presence like it is sacred air. Walk with the knowing that your very existence is a frequency, a vibration, a silent song that changes the atmosphere everywhere you go. For those with ears to hear, it will awaken them. For those too afraid, it will unsettle them. But for you, it will always be enough. Because the world does not need you to explain yourself. The world needs you to embody yourself. And you have done exactly that. You are the proof that freedom exists. You are the presence that cannot be ignored. You are the reminder that authenticity is possible. And in a world built on pretense, you, The unapologetic, unshaken, unconditioned you are the most dangerous, most powerful, and most necessary revolution of all. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten Wisdom.